Jack Pearce from the Pearce Brothers, welcome to Australian Musician.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me about growing up at home. Was there much music in the house?
Yeah, there was a lot. I was the youngest of 5 kids. Well, Pat and I were both the youngest. They were going for 4 and they got twins. And our older brothers played guitar, so we wanted to copy them. They were into a lot of, Nirvana, Pearl Jam were the kind of biggest things, Soundgarden. And so I think, Nirvana was the first songs I ever learned on guitar, playing sideways like this when I was about 6, because we just had Unplugged in New York, on all the time. And then we used to just sing a lot with Mum on car trips, but I think we used to drive the others a bit crazy.
What other duos or combined voices have been an influence on you?
Simon and Garfunkel. Crowded House. And then I think later on, just kind of the lyrical stylings and the vocal stylings of Mumford & Sons and the Lumineers even were huge because they were just, the way they approached folk was something that we hadn't really experienced and we really enjoyed. So that had probably the biggest impact.
You played Blues Fest one year that I know of. Did you come across any of those bands?
None of those bands. We did come across, Ben Harper and Jack Johnson back in the day, that got us into music. And touring around Australia with Ben Harper was one of the best experiences of my life. And then we've seen Ben and the Innocent Criminals every time we go on to Blues Fest. We run into them. And it's been a few years in a row now where we'll be in our dressing room and Sticks and a couple of the other guys, the drummer and a couple of the crew, will just run into our dressing room and be like, hey, and surprise us. So we've done the same to them and yeah, we're looking forward to doing it hopefully next time. But it depends when they'll be coming back,
You did quite a bit of busking in the early days as well. What was your best day busking?
Boxing Day, I want to say 2014 was a huge day busking. I think we sold around about 500 CDs that day, and we had all this cash on us and we didn't know what to do with it. We were we do a half-hour set and then a half-hour off. So we were trying to run to the I think there was an ATM that would deposit straight into the account because none of the banks were open on Boxing Day, of course. And so we were trying to just kind of deposit, and then we had somebody come down and just pick up some cash because we didn't want to just have it all sitting there. But that was the biggest day of busking, I think, that we've ever had.
Being twins, do you think sometimes there's a real intuitive thing happening that wouldn't happen if you weren't twins?
I don't know that it wouldn't happen if we weren't twins. I think because we do spend a lot of time together, that there's certainly an intuition there. And, that develops over the years. That develops with a lot of bands that they play together. But I think, being so close from actually being little kids, there's probably certainly something there, I think. And it really helped and kind of dictated the way that we play because a lot of our set would be improvised as we go. And that comes from the busking, that really dictates the way that we and directed the direction of our live performance.
You're a very upbeat band and you travel a lot when you're allowed to travel.
Yeah.
Travel can also wear you down. How do you pep each other up pre-gig?
We don't. Often we really don't, especially if we're on the road and we're really tired, then you'll find us backstage looking at our phones or lying down, and then just before, we'll do a couple of vocal warm-ups to warm up, and then we'll do our 3 deep breaths where we'll get it in a crew with the rest of our crew will kind of get together and huddle and do 3 deep breaths in a huddle. I don't think that's going to be happening much anymore in the post-COVID world, but other than that, and then we kind of just amp up, and then once we're on. But I think other than that, we're very lazy and quiet backstage.
Last year you were on tour with Tash Sultana around the globe. What were some of the highlights of that tour?
Italy, Ferrara was one of the best shows. There was so many highlights. I think my favourite night of that tour in Europe was when we played in London at the Ali Palace, which is Alexander Palace, which I think is a 10,000 cap, and Mum and Dad were in London for that, and so they came along, and then the Gang of Youths guys were there, and Matt Corby was there, and so it was hanging around with some of my favourite artists and meeting the Gang of Youths guys. And we'd just finished an album, that last album that we did, and was really inspired by their Go Further Into Lightness, and just having drinks and chatting with them, and they were really nice guys. And you know, having come off playing to that many people, that was probably the best night of the tour, I'd say. And that was the first night as well, so it all just kind of, yeah, it kicked off well.
You guys have got a new single out called Kanko.
Yep.
What was the starting point for that track?
This was a song. We wrote this a couple of years ago in my little home. No, not even a couple of years ago. I reckon about a year ago in my little home studio. And it was just something that we really liked. And my dog Kanko walked in. And we said, all right, let's just put this down. That's really cool. We'll work on that. We'll come back to it. And we could never make it work. We just didn't know how to do it. So we tabled it for ages. And then we got in the studio at the start of the year with Garrett Cato. We were working on a bunch of other tracks. And we said, all right, let's do a co-write today. What have we got? And I said, well, I've got this idea here that we've been working on. And it was originally called Mountain Song because of the lyrics in the story. Pat and I were both pretty burnt out after a really long touring schedule, and we were about to take our first time off ever, and we were going to take 2 months off to go travelling. I was travelling to New Zealand to go into the mountains and go hiking with my fiance, and then get married at the end of it. The wedding didn't happen because of COVID, but the song was written about going out and finding peace in the mountains, and then, you know, just getting into nature and you know, finding your solace. And then at the last second, Pat said, I think that we should call it Kanko, because Kanko was named after a mountain in Japan. And so we changed the name back to that.
Garrett Cato, you mentioned, as a co-writer, he's also a producer.
Yep.
And one of the busiest guys around. Everybody I talk to is working with
him.
Yeah. What does he bring to the Pierce brothers?
He brings a beautiful energy. We were supposed to do the entire record with him, but of course then the world ended, and we've done it with another producer, Jan Skubashevsky, who is an absolutely incredible producer as well. Two very different styles. With Garrett, it was a small tracking room, and we did a lot of beats that we could find and then replace as we go. So the writing went very quickly, and we built a sound really quickly that we really loved. And he has a great idea for acoustic tones, but with a real hip vibe. Like he just really gets it, and that's why I think that everyone loves him so much, because he's just absolutely on it. He knows what the sound he wants, and he has some great guitars as well. I mean, he's got this Gibson J45 that has one of the best tones I've ever heard, and so yeah, that's why I love playing in his studio.
So Kanko was a single. Do you have much new material in the can? What's the plan? An EP, an album?
Yeah, we've got an album. We've done about 17 songs because we had all this time on our hands and we had so much to write about. And we already had a full album kind of written before we went away. And then we came back and said, let's put some more down. So we've got 17 tracks ready and raring, and we're going to whittle it down, I think, to maybe a 13 or 14 track album, and save a couple for a little bit later on down the line. And we have three of them in there were produced by Garrett, and the rest will be produced by Jan Skubashevsky. So one of the songs is completely mixed and mastered, which was Kanko, and another one mixed and mastered, which is called In the Morning. And we're thinking, do we release that and then do all the yarn stuff, or do we finish it all completely and do that? And that's a conversation, I think, for tomorrow. I think we're figuring that out.
What do you know now about recording that you didn't know the first time you stepped into a studio?
Preparation is key. It really, look, we still don't do that completely. You know, we still find ourselves writing in the studio. But I think there's so many things that you just learn as you go that you start to figure out exactly what you make a picture of what you want in your mind, and when you can hear that. And achieving that, hearing what you hear in your mind and achieving that are two very different things, and sometimes it doesn't work out. And I think just experience is something that you slowly get over time, and that's the most important thing, is just to get in there and keep doing it, you know. Also finding somebody that you can really trust, a producer that you're incredibly lucky if you can find somebody that you can trust and they can take you in directions that you wouldn't have thought possible. Like Jan has done with a couple of the songs on this record, and he's just pulled off some of the best sounds, and that we're super excited about.
Do you have a home studio set up? Do you have
Yes,
like
I've got a little Roland Octave Capture set up with a couple of Neumann mics, and then Pat's piano is in the corner because he's in an apartment, so I'm stuck with it, and then a little AKG. Little modularizer thing just to MIDI, to get some sounds in. And then, all of our guitars and banjos and nylons, and I've got most of them. Some of them we've had to put in storage because I'm starting to overflow here.
Which DAW using recording software?
Logic.
Okay.
Yeah. Logic I find is the best for recording and writing, because it's just very easy to kind of, write on that. And then I'll often write the songs, work them again until I've got them to a pretty good idea, and then we'll take them into the studio and say, right, here's the basis for the song. Now let's make this really good. Let's do live recording as much as we can. Let's try and get the vibe in there, and that's the best way that we try to get it done. It doesn't always work, but we try.
You've got a nice looking Maton guitar there.
Yep.
Tell me about where you got that and what you like about it.
This particular one is probably my favourite touring guitar at the moment. We actually won this one at Port Fairy Folk Festival after being the best new live act. You'll see with all of our acoustic guitars that they've got a lot of damage to them, because when we were busking, we wanted to get people interested and looking at us. So I'd kind of do somersaults and start hitting stuff with my sticks. And then we started hitting the guitar with sticks, and everyone went, ooh, and more people came to look. That kind of turned into a real thing, and now we do it on a bunch of our songs. We've put a hole in this guitar a few times, and this has just been one of the most fun guitars. What we've done with all of our guitars as well is put a second pickup in here with a Damasio pickup there, which will run out and split into two systems. So we still use the AP5 for a clean tone, and then we'll put this through a wah pedal and a fat cow pedal that gives it a real great overdrive to give it kind of that blues feel as well. And then we run them separately, so we'll have them both going at the same time.
Has achieving a good acoustic sound live been a bit of a journey for you?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And it's still a journey. We've got this wonderful Blues Junior that we got in from the States and brought over, and we haven't used it since the Tash Sultana tour in the States. And this beautiful tweed Blues Junior from Fender, and then we brought it back to Australia, and in the year that we've been back, I haven't gone and picked up a converter so I can be using it in Australia. But then on the third last day of the studio, we decided to bring it in. We said, we've got this 56 Gretsch acoustic, so let's plug that in to that and then see if we get a nice electric overdrive tone out of that. And that was something, this 56 Gretsch isn't going to, it's not touring, like you have to stop halfway through and then retune it up. So it's great for the recording studio when you're doing little bits, but that has a beautiful tone. So now I think what we're going to be doing is running the Damasio through those things, then out into maybe a secondary amp, because we've got the amp there. So we're finally kind of starting to feel, but it's always evolving and it's always trying to find the best tone that we can get.
What about recording guitars? How do you usually mic them up?
We'll use, it depends on the song. So if you really want a nice, we'll get a nice like AKG or something over in the corner to pick up a bit of the room, a bit of the ambience, especially if you're going for a more quiet thing. And then just a couple of mics on the amp, and then we'll have a mic on the acoustic if we're playing it in another room as well. And that's how we did it a lot in the studio. So you'll have, 4 or 5 inputs for the one guitar tone, but then you can really, mix and get the right sound that you want.
Being an internationally touring band,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be careful about how much gear you take on the road.
Yeah.
How many guitars do you generally take with you?
That's a good question. I think we take 5 with us. We'll take 4 with us, 3 acoustics and 1 electric. And we toured the Gibson 335, which is my favourite electric guitar. And then we've got a Mexican Telecaster as well, 72 reissue. But the 335, I think we've snapped the neck 3 times now, all by mistake. One of them, it literally fell over in front of me. Another time it was on stage. It snapped halfway through a gig because somebody knocked over it and it just fell over, snapped on stage. I think that was when was that? I think that was at a Ben Harper show. And then, or the Cat Empire show, I think, actually. And then another time, it just happened when it was flying through with Russian air, I think. Picked it up, it was snapped. But we've now since had a couple of rods put in there to kind of hold it in place, and we always make sure that we tune them down before we, break any more.
Do you have a favourite music store that you go for your strings and picks and looks after you?
Yeah, I think GH Music usually look after us pretty well in Flemington. We've always stopped in there. Then we just kind of hit up our local ones. There's a really small little one in Caulfield South, just at the end of my road, that I'll get my strings, picks and any little thing that I need for the studio. And then, Allen's in the city have always been good to us. It depends on which town you're in, because there's always someone that's happy to help out and, that'll come to the show and that we meet as we go, because we go through a lot of strings. I think we'll usually, if we're on tour, we'll go 2 shows and then replace all the strings. Because, especially if they're big support shows and we snap so many strings, especially the way Pat tunes the guitar. Pat didn't know what he was doing when he tuned up originally, so he'd do an open C, which is what John Butler plays. Of course, he didn't know that, so he just did an open D, which is the D shape there. So you're tuning the E up to an F sharp, the B up to a B, C sharp, D. Yeah, you're tuning that up to a D, and then dropping this. So it's really high, super taut, and the way he plays it, snap strings all the time. And we've just kind of stuck with it, and that's just how we roll.
Tell me about Balancing Act, the initiative that you're involved with.
So Patrick started this with a friend of ours, Prue Walker, who's a social worker, and what they wanted to do is, while there was a lot of musicians or creatives, comedians, all sorts, that were in isolation at home, they wanted to do some good, and they thought a great way would be to, Prue's idea was to get them involved with children or anybody with learning disabilities, where they couldn't usually get out of the house and go and do activities that they usually would be able to do. So connecting those 2 people so that there was a bit of entertainment or opportunities to learn, that kind of thing. And they put that together with a bunch of really great artists, and they've done an amazing job. They've really put together something really special.
Cool. You've got a show coming up at the Cherry Bar with a limited amount of people.
That's right, yeah.
Tell me about that.
That's going to be interesting. We're just announcing that today, and I don't know. I don't know how it's going to go. I think it's going to be very interesting with only 20 people there. I think there's a couple of sets. We do an 8 p.m. one that's going to be live streamed. And if anybody wants to jump on, they can grab a ticket, and I think they can get a shout out or something, or a song away if they want a particular one. And then there's a much later one after that when everything's done for a next group of people, which is, I think we start playing at 11. And when I'm touring, I'm a late night, I'm a night owl. But since I've not been touring and I've been hiking and doing all this stuff, I go to bed at like 7 p.m. Like, it's 8:30 and I'm in my bed with my book and I'm stoked. So I don't know, I'm really excited just to get on a stage and to play to some people. And I think we're going to be doing a lot of new stuff. I was talking to Pat about it today. Pat's just had his wisdom teeth out, so he's not going to be singing for the next couple of days. But I'm really excited to try some of the new songs.
Yeah. And what date's that?
That's going to be on Wednesday, the 8th of July.
Okay. And the revised plans for 2020 into 2021?
We're moving things up to late October, I think, for our regional tour. Hopefully have the album out in October as well. I mean, it's recorded and done. It just depends on picking the date now, which is not usually the way things roll. We're on tour so much that we never know when it's going to be finished, but having so much time to record, it's been fantastic. I think that, fingers crossed, everything goes well, and we'll just see what the world throws at us next.
Right, Jack Pearce, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.